talk to the people that are burning out in ER, it's very different than what's triggering somebody from burning out, having compassion fatigue in a day-to-day setup. And one of my colleagues and friends, she loves day practice and it's awesome. She always tries to convince me to come back into it. And every time she describes everything that she loves about it, I'm like, that is everything I hate.
Everyone talks about burnout, but no one's talking about all the steps that lead to burnout. And, one of the biggest things and I'm very, very good friends with Dr. Danny Rabwin, who owns Ready Vet Go. I think one of the biggest problems in the profession, and I'm going to call out all those legacies that they almost like retire on the job because their brain is fried. And once they do quit, they're nowhere to be found.
I think one of the issues is that one of the, three different problems that we have in our profession, I think one of them is we kind of put this, we lump it in together. And I do feel that what causes different people stress, and even you go to these lectures and there's this big thing of compassion fatigue is not burnout. It's different than other types of stress. But even within compassion fatigue, I feel that we say compassion fatigue as a bucket and oh, you fit in here. Well, what triggers it for one is very different than another. I talk to the people that are burning out in ER, and it's very different than what's triggering somebody from burning out, having compassion fatigue in a day-to-day setup.
So they gave me imposter syndrome. I went to Pepperdine, got my MBA, thinking that I wasn't doing things right. Found out obviously I was. And then the dean there asked me to stay on and get my doctorate in business administration. So my big project I'm doing is I'm studying the attrition rate in early career professionals, kind of geared towards what my podcast was on. I'm trying to help the early career ones that are out there that are burning out so bad. But I'm looking at stress and attrition through a whole bunch of independent variables using emotional labor, client incivility as
I would love to talk to you about this because I feel like I'm a bit opinionated when it comes to how our profession approaches it.
Oh yeah, well, don't get me started because I called AVMA. They said they're not interested. Called all the reached out to all the veterinary schools. They said they weren't interested. CVMA not interested. SCVMA not interested. But yet AVMA puts out on their socials that all veterinarians, techs, assistants, whatever, get free QPR training. So basically, let's just start training people how to prevent suicide, because we'll put the dead man's curve sign right at dead man's curve, so people just go off the cliff.
Right. And there's so many, oh my gosh, I feel like we have, when it comes to compassion fatigue and burnout, I feel like we have really, several big errors that we do in this. And it's really frustrating to me.
Right.
I don't know. I'd love to get your take on it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'd love to talk to you about it because, I'm just like you. I love to hear my voice. So, yeah, no. And the thing is that I'm looking at stress three ways so I can triangulate it. So I'm looking at it through self-survey, interviews, and I'm also doing salivary cortisol levels. So, I went with salivary cortisol because actually what you look at is you look at amylase. And amylase spikes with cortisol spikes in saliva. So then I didn't have to go through the International Review Board and say, oh yeah, I'm going to basically draw blood on, 100 people, because I don't think that would have flown at Pepperdine, because they're really not, well, they're starting a nursing program, but they're not medically, that way. But saliva is no problem. So we call it the drool method. So they spit in a cup 3 times in one day, and we can just see what their cortisol is doing. And obviously I hope to take it on to recovery and looking at, there's so many things that this model can create as far as research goes. The research has been great on veterinary stress and burnout, but it's been very superficial. It really hasn't come up with anything that we can really do. I really think personally, we need to change the way we're accepting veterinary students. We accept on IQ, not emotional intelligence. We select perfectionists, and I look through it through the attraction, selection, attrition theory lens, which basically says if you keep attracting and selecting the same people, you're going to get this homogeneous mixture of, it's not even a mixture, just homogeneous population of people. And then, of course, we're wondering for 20 years why burnout hasn't gotten better, but worse, because that's what we're selecting. Because I just got to be honest, you are the best lecturer I have ever heard in 25 years.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Wow. That means a lot. That means a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so I mean, Dr. Lee, I want to know about your ER years, and then I want to I would love to know about, the prevention piece, but I have questions I want to have answered. So these early career grads know how to answer them, such as lepto doesn't exist in my backyard, vaccine issues, stuff like that. And I also have to talk to you about screwworms because I've been seeing everything you're putting out there about screwworms.
I just made a video this morning on it. 45 cases of humans in Mexico.
In Mexico?
Yes, 45 human cases of New World screwworm. It's scary. And I just put out a little video yesterday on, now they're doing vampire bat mitigation as well to try to help reduce New World screwworm attacks onto livestock. So it's here, it's coming. I feel like we all have a lot of normalcy bias of it's not possible for flesh-eating, little maggot come in across our doors, and it's coming.
I once had a client that told me that there's no way her animal can have fleas because she lives in a gated community.
I know, it's like, how small are your gates, ma'am? Are you allowed out? Are you allowed to be here?
Aren't you paying for security? Come on. Right. So why don't you give everyone a little bit of history about you? Because I know quite a bit because I've listened to a few of your lectures. I've known you since we met at, I think, Disneyland when Merck came out with Bravecto.
Was it, or was it with Beringer Ingelheim?
It was Merck with Bravecto.
Was it Merck with Bravecto? Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, it's been great to know you for so long. I'm glad that we kind of got reconnected. My background came out UC Davis. Worked in private practice for a while. Ended up owning a couple hospitals. Sold those. Went on to the corporate side. Got a master's in public health. Went on and became a diplomate of the American College of Preventive Medicine, which is basically a specialty in public health. Continued to do a lot of speaking. Currently, I feel like I've lost my mind because I'm going for another board specialty. So hopefully this year or next, be board certified in parasitology as well. I took a kind of a break from corporate, went in and became ER medical director for a while they were transition. It was kind of a perfect thing because they wanted somebody to kind of fix a lot of the issues they were having at the hospital while it was getting ready and to be sold for corporate. And I just wanted a short term for me to then back down and really work on parasitology boards. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And then I fell into a wonderful position of being the host of Vet Watch at DVM 360. And so that's me.
So give us a little bit about Vet Watch at DVM 360.
So Vet Watch, and we have brand new merch with our little logo. She's very cute. Vet Watch, we're trying to have it to be a twice a month interview of different veterinary professionals and paraprofessionals, and just talking about different topics. So we've had a really great one that's coming out with Dr. Jeannie's from Western about AI and how that's shaping veterinary medicine and how that's changing how we teach. We've had Dr. Jeromen from Florida a couple times talking about dermatology. So we're kind of all over. And then there's also one where I've talked to two people that were journalists. So it's a pretty wide range.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a wide range. Yeah, that AI in veterinary medicine, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's going to make life easier. It's going to make writing records up easier, which is obviously the bane of every veterinarian's existence are those records, because that's your legal document. But then, you also have, it's going to make x-rays easier. It's going to make diagnosing easier. It's going to give you differentials that maybe, even though you're a great veterinarian, we're all human and we forget a couple. But the double-edged sword is where I think, it's going to make our life easier. Will that improve our work-life balance? Will we have more time with patients? Or is it going to really cause, especially if you're corporate owned, have us see more patients?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so I think Dr. Genie is one of, the tidbit, one of the big pearls that I got from his, and again, everyone should watch it. It's kind of really a fun interview and eye-opening. And he says so many great things, but I think the one pearl that really stuck with me was, are you using AI to go through your brain to improve it, or is it bypassing? Is it going around?
Correct.
If you're using it so your brain doesn't have to connect to it, then that is going to be an issue.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm very lucky because I got into my doctoral degree right when AI was, just starting to be used. And, it's funny because you talk to all these, like the OG researchers, and they just are so upset about AI in research. But then, you have us newbies that are like, this is fantastic, because instead of just interviewing 30, 40 people for a qualitative study, I can interview 500. I can interview 1,000, because you're going to have AI help you break down the themes and quotes and all those things. So I think it's really going to give you more of an in-depth, rich type study. But it's almost like, an initiation that these researchers are expecting these students to go through. And, so it is a battle. AI is not going anywhere. We just got to figure out how to use it ethically.
I think I think we need to have like a healthy fear of it, but I think there's a lot of fear that we need to let go, which is, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to become obsolete. No, it's not. It may change what we do, and hopefully it allows us to then be more productive, not less.
Right. And and also you could be like, no, you're a human. A person is bringing in their pet to you to talk to a human, not to a doctor. They want a technician to be working on their animal, not a robot. So, and the one thing that AI, as of at least of right now, does not have is human emotion. But once that quantum chip comes out and that quantum computer comes out, it's going to be scary. It'll be scary. I mean, I'm excited and I'm scared at the same time.
Well, I think where it already is, though, Dr. Genie, is they were looking at vet students, and it was when they were asking questions or saying, I'm having issues with this, and they were getting human responses and AI generated. They actually felt that the AI generated was more empathetic. So it has been interesting, like where we already are, there's a level of EQ. And the thing that blows my mind is the humor. AI has humor. And that was something from growing up, as a little kid watching, Star Trek and all these little sci-fi things, the Terminator, right? All these things of coming out, AI is going to destroy the world. Never was it done with humor. And I feel like it's so odd. AI, they can hit humor very well, but then God forbid you get somebody like Ben Franklin with 5 fingers on each hand. That they can't do, but they can hit the humor. It's very strange. It is not what I think we expect.
Yeah, and what's really scary is on the social media side, there's a lot of disinformation being spread by AI videos. And I don't know if your algorithm is anything like mine, but I see all the veterinary pet stuff, and there are some videos that are out there that are spreading so much disinformation, and that's why I'm glad you're here, because there's a lot of things I think early career professionals need to know and they need tools in order to circumvent things that clients read on Dr. Google, chat, or even see on social media which they don't teach you in school, right? They don't teach you how to
Correct.
circumvent those very difficult situations.
And actually, that's come in as I'm getting a lot closer to my board exams with parasitology. It is something that I have learned is that one of the challenges with this specialty is there's a lot of information, but it's not as accessible as you would think. And when you go onto Google, oh my gosh, the information's not there. And so when you do put in AI, the number of times that it's wrong is surprising, like more than half probably. So when it's coming to certain aspects of what we do, I think it's also pulling up a lot of just what is on the internet.
Correct.
Well, that is the problem, is when you're dealing with medicine, there is a lot of things where the disinformation may outnumber the correct information. And so the AI is not necessarily saying what's properly resourced. It's just saying, well, between these two, gosh, there's a lot of people saying don't worry about lepto. So boom. Not to say that's what I pulled up with AI, because I haven't searched that, but I have found that with a lot of, even too, when I look up some kind of obscure tapeworm, it'll immediately tell me everything. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, wait a second, this is tinea. I'm like, yep, because it didn't have the information, so it pulled with what was a lot and pulled it over.
Where in your career did you finally realize that crisis is not where I want to be, but I'd rather be in prevention?
Oh, you mean like ER or just general?
ER, yeah, going from ER to becoming the prevention specialist.
So ER was always kind of more, it's kind of weird. And this would be maybe a good time at some point to circle back what we were talking about at the very beginning with compassion fatigue. When it comes to dealing with working with clients, I actually really do like the ER setting. If I was much younger, I'd probably think about doing a specialty with that, but this will by far be my last specialty.
Never say never. I'm 53 and I'm getting another doctorate.
My best friend, she has said that she will come and kill me if I talk her into another specialty. And I believe her. I believe her. No, I like preventive medicine. I like the speaking aspect. I like the writing aspect. And when you're dealing with these types of specialties, they are definitely removed one from the pet owner. And that is one of the challenges of long term when you have preventive medicine specialty and hopefully parasitology specialty. Neither one of those are really helpful with a direct interaction. So it's more of a placement of where my specialty is.
If there was one thing that you could spare every new grad from going through, a painful lesson, what would that be?
That's a good question. You know, I think, and we were talking about this before, about the problems that we have with compassion fatigue, the emotional challenges, burnout, all of the different issues. I think one of the issues is that one of the, I think, 3 different problems that we have in our profession, I think one of them is we kind of put this, we lump it in together. And I do feel that what causes different people stress, and even like, right, you go to these lectures and there's this big thing of compassion fatigue is not burnout. It's different than other types of stress. But even within compassion fatigue, I feel that we say compassion fatigue as a bucket and like, oh, you fit in here. Well, what triggers it for one is very different than another. I talk to the people that are burning out in ER, and it's very different than what's triggering somebody from burning out, having compassion fatigue in a day-to-day setup. And one of my colleagues and friends, she loves day practice and it's awesome. She always tries to convince me to come back into it. And every time she describes everything that she loves about it, I'm like, that is everything I hate. That is exactly why I can't do that.
I can't agree with you more. You know, I went and did a relief shift because I like to dip my toes in the water every now and then. And I did an 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. emergency relief shift. And the one thing that we were talking about, which was so interesting, is we were talking about euthanasia. And I was like, man, towards the end of my day shift or my, general practice, I would go outside and be vomiting before I would have to do a euthanasia. I just couldn't do them anymore. And they were saying, oh yeah, we do them so much here. You know, it's just part of our job. You know, it's no big deal. I'm wondering if it had something to do with the relationship that you had with the client, right? Because you see 2-3 generations worth of clients in day practice. And it's so weird that you said that, because what they didn't have a problem with at an emergency shift, I couldn't handle in the day shift.
It's also context. And I love that you brought that up, because on Sundays, I actually do a home euthanasia thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, when I've done euthanasia during day practice, when I've done it on ER, when I've done it as a scheduled home, the experience is completely different. And what causes me compassion fatigue, what makes my heart hurt, for me, it is what I see in day practice that I find more challenging. With ER, a lot of these animals, okay, yeah, maybe they waited too long, maybe there was something else going on, but for the situation where we are right now, this animal is suffering and we are able to relieve that pet. With the home euthanasia, the group that I do it through, it's a very, I don't know how to say, we do everything to make the experience as comfortable for them as possible. And so these are people that typically, it's a different setup with how it is. So at any rate, I think that's interesting, because when I've been doing day practice and the euthanasia, just while I've been working on my studies, so I can do that just on weekends. I'm like you. When we have euthanasias on day practice, I'm like, oh, man, I don't want to see it. I don't want to do it. When I do either a Sunday shift or at the ER, it does not bother me.
It's got to do with that emotional relationship you have with the client at that time, you know? That's the
But I
biggest
think
thing
it's
I
the
would think.
context of how it came in, because when I go in on day practice, I've never met those people before. So I think if you're talking about that context of how we're interacting with the client, yes, but the context of, like, with the ER, I mean, if they come to see me at 2 a.m. to euthanize their animal, there's a very good reason for that to occur.
Right.
And we are taking that pet out of pain, and we are stopping suffering. And that does not cause me compassion.
What about the concept of the cost of care euthanasia, especially at emergency and specialty clinics? I mean, that has to come into play at some point.
Interesting. That's one of a couple reasons why when I do ER, I do night shifts. They don't come in at 2 a.m.
Yeah. I mean, that discussion in itself, I couldn't even imagine. I got out in time. That's what I tell myself, because the cost of care is just astronomical at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And
sometimes it depends on the situation, right? I mean, there are convenience euthanasias that I will not do. And to the point where it's become, very uncomfortable situations with that. But I will stand my ground. Even when I did a couple of the appointment ones, we've had two that the dogs had urinary tract infections. I'm not going to euthanize your pet for that. I ended up helping them get the, one pet rehomed, but I'm not going to euthanize. But some of it, when it is cost of care, I mean, it is a realistic problem.
Yeah.
When you have a pet that's,
foreign body.
Swallowed something and they need a surgery. I mean, sometimes there is, and even when you're trying to get it at hospitals that can do it at a lower amount, that those finances still aren't there. And we can't have the pet suffer.
Right. Yeah. It you know, and everyone always asks me why I left the profession. And one of the things I realized, Chris, was when I got towards the end, is that I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And it was because I love this profession. Love working with the animals. I love being able to make healing animals. I think that's amazing. I wish I could do it for free. I really do. You know, and then I think that would give me fulfillment. I used to every Christmas do the 12 days of Christmas. I used to do 12 procedures for free. That people couldn't afford. Like I would do a PU if a cat was blocked. I would do a gastropexy. I would do a soft palate. You know, anything that people in the hospitals around me knew I would do that, and I would just do it just because for fulfillment purposes. And people are like, "Oh, you're crazy! You're giving away your services." I'm like, "Yeah, you know, I have enough clients that are paying me on the other end that I can probably give this away." But you know, I just look at it that way. I don't know if we've moved away from thinking that way in this profession. And it's just very interesting for me now that I'm on the other side academically looking in, and I'm able to walk into different practices and see the different things that I've been reading about just in what they say, their body language, the lack of empathy for clients now that I see in a lot of veterinarians when I go into places. It's like, wow, we really, truly got a problem here, and this needs to be figured out.
We do, and I think part of that too comes back to what we were talking about earlier with when they're running on empty, right? Emotionally, when they're on empty, they don't have it necessarily for anyone else because they are struggling. And that's where I feel like we need to be focusing too on how, I mean, take a look at who are veterinarians, right? You're scholastically in the top percentage. You're very empathic. You care, right? Now that those are different necessarily than what you had talked about. That doesn't always imply high EQ. I think many of them do, but I feel that you are someone that cares. It's more about helping than necessarily finances, highly intelligent. And when you put them in a situation where they're not getting their why met, then we all start to run on empty. And then it just creates problems. And I feel that one of the big challenges that we have in this profession is, and I'd love to get your opinion on it, is who we seek to help with this problem, right? You're actually working on a doctorate to kind of help this and take care of this from one angle. I don't know about you, but when I go to conferences and I see who speaks on it, when I've worked at corporations and we pull in speakers to talk to clients or groups, or we have internal training, it's very interesting. But what I see as more of the rule than the exception is veterinary professionals that maybe have some type of certification or advanced interest in this, and that's who they bring in. And I find that so fascinating because isn't that what kind of one of most veterinarian top buttons in the exam room is the client that comes in and goes, no, I know more than you with the doctorate because I've read this or I have a background in human nutrition. And all of a sudden we have this large argument. And yet what we are doing is we're doing the same thing. We are not going to mental health professionals. That becomes more of the exception than the rule. And to me, that's one of the big problems. And when I talk to people and say, well, why don't we do this? Or when I've been at corporate and we've said, hey, we need to get a speaker because this corporation wants to have a value add where it's going to be about, compassion, fatigue, and burnout, we don't go and find a licensed therapist. And when I brought this up, they're like, well, they want to hear someone that's been through it. They want someone that's had that experience. I'm like, that sounds good, but that also sounds like the person with diabetes saying to their doctor, I'd rather take advice from someone else that has diabetes than you because you just have the doctor. Or, you know, saying that somebody that's gone through PTSD from war going, well, I'm not going to listen to the therapist because you haven't been shot at. I'm like, well, that's not how that works. I mean, you and I are both veterinarians, but you and I have never sat in the position of a dog. We don't know what it is like to be so. But that is our training, is how to help that. So not to say that the people with just like with certifications should not be talking about this. I'm not saying that. And I think some of them have some very good points. But I think that when you take a look at the amount of that versus those that are truly just in mental health, that is a big disconnect.
Well, you know, it's funny you bring that up because I think CE in general needs to be disrupted. I think the whole profession needs to be disrupted, and I love being a disruptor, so there's no problem with that. I think the thing they're missing is that licensed professionals that give you tools on how to combat whatever mental disconnect you're having, which veterinarians can give you tools, but they probably read about it in a journal. They haven't practiced it. They're not licensed to practice mental health. You know, you could say, well, how about those general dentals? Oh, we can't have them because they're not, you know, they haven't done it. We were trained how to do a dental correctly. Well, when it comes to the mental health fatigue, just having a veterinarian to come in to talk about mental health is like bringing in someone who does general dental, in my opinion, right? I think
Well, and sometimes even worse, because one of the things too is like some of these certifications, when you have certifications, those are just trademarks. So you do, unless you know the organization that is providing that, you do not know what type of training. So for example, one of the ones I think is common is CCFPs, Certified Compassion Fatigue Professionals. So I had ended up doing that. And when I'd gone on to the site, I paid my $200. I was a little confused on the site. I clicked on the test, which I thought was a pre-test. I got done with the pre-test and they said, well,
congrats.
You now can put this at the end of your name. And I'm like, okay, like, I guess that's all that. So now I can go out and give a course.
Yeah. Well, and that's another specialty for you. Look at that. You're just putting in all the initials in there.
Right. And that's like a frustration is to me, a certification is very different than when we say letters after your name. And it doesn't mean that those aren't important, but someone with that is not in the same ballpark as a mental health professional.
No.
And I feel that when we pull in mental health professionals, I think some of those people that do have that background, that should be part of who interfaces. So I do think that they're important, but I think right now we're using that as the main source. And then I don't know about you, but when I go to a lot of these talks, it's very similar. Well, here's all the stats. Here's all the things that cause the problems. These are the stressors. Burnout is not the same as compassion fatigue. And you start looking at your watch going, oh, is there a part 2? Because we only got 15 minutes here. And then they're like, no, we got the fix for you. So we're going to want to talk to you about breathing and some centering
and yoga.
Some yoga and some exercise and sleep. Stay hydrated. I'm like, these are Band-Aids. This would be like at a trauma unit going, hey guys, don't forget on our meeting today, the drawer here has all the Band-Aids. Yep. Use them liberally. We're going to do a quick talk about how to apply a Band-Aid, and we just want you to just use many as you need. I'm like, this is not it. Now, is centering, breathing, yoga, exercise, are these important? Yes, but these are short-term coping skills and probably lifelong ways of living that are good, but it's not fixing the underlying, why is this person's why not being met? They have a doctorate in this, and yet their career, it is career. It's a job, it's not a career, and it's not filling that cup.
You know, and man, we could go so deep on this because you bring up a lot of points for me that I really want to counterbalance or talk about as well, because I mean, obviously burnout isn't just burnout. Burnout is emotional exhaustion, depolarization, and lack of self-worth. Okay, so what brings us to that point? What brings us to those three? Well, I think it goes all the way back. Let's take another step back. Do the people we get in this profession truly have a realistic career preview? Like, how many of these veterinarians worked 2, 3, 4,000 hours in a veterinary clinic before they went to vet school? Do they have the emotional capability of dealing with veterinary medicine? Do their values match the profession? How do you deal with rumination? Like you said, go get sleep. Well, if you're ruminating, you're going to go home and you're not going to sleep. And also, the problem with burnout is the depolarization. You don't want to talk to anybody. You're not going to go exercise. You're not going to go to your church or synagogue. You're not going to go out and eat with your girlfriends or your husband or your partner. You're not going to go do all those things. And it's like, you got to get ahead of it. And that's the problem. Everyone talks about burnout, but no one's talking about all the steps that lead to burnout. And one of the biggest things and I'm very, very good friends with Dr. Danny Rabwin, who owns Ready Vet Go. The mentoring piece is missing. I think one of the biggest problems in the profession, and I'm going to call out all those legacies that they almost like retire on the job because their brain is fried. And once they do quit, they're nowhere to be found. Or at least I look at the human medicine model. Like once these doctors do graduate, they actually get on boards and they get involved in education and all those things. I think veterinary schools need to be, and the academians at veterinary school are amazing, but how many of them have truly been on the front lines fighting that war? They need more general practitioners teaching vet school. I don't think opening more vet schools is the answer, because who's going to teach those veterinarians?
That's a whole new topic.
Yeah, I mean, you get my brain going on, and these are all different things that we could talk about for sure.
We actually need to pull back on the vet schools. It's not. Yeah, I agree. In a very short thing, my feeling is where our biggest problem is we have not empowered the veterinary technician. And to me, like again, when we work at ER shift, I remember there was one where because I usually do ProSal, and I got payment, and I called up the office manager. I'm like, I think you double paid me. She goes, no, that was your production. I was like, yeah, it was kind of a crazy shift.
Yeah.
But the next shift, we had so many people call out because of how bad the other shift was. We didn't get anything done. It was really hard to get things done. But what was interesting was on the days where we do a lot, I don't need another veterinarian. I need more technicians, and we need to empower them. Well, assistants and technicians. And I feel like the veterinary technician itself, it needs to be an elevated situation. And I think the situation in Colorado, I don't think that was the right solution on how to do that. I don't think you don't bypass the techs, find people with bachelors and get them into surgery and diagnosis. What we need to do is take the technicians and elevate them, and not have a situation where we don't have all states that even protect the name.
Do you believe when you say empower veterinary technicians, and I took note on this, do you believe we don't trust our technicians enough?
Yes. Is it trust?
I mean, do you want to put, I mean, when you're trusting your technician to do something, granted, in California, at least, they do have a license, but your license is on the line as well.
So I guess that's twofold. I think part of it is knowing who you're working with, right? So on our little Vet Watch show, we have a thing called Tech Time, and it's me and my ER tech, and we talk about various things. Oh my gosh, her, I trust implicitly, and I also trust that she knows what she knows, and she knows what she doesn't know. But I feel that part of how it's been there is that she wants to take the responsibility, and vets have slowly taken that and allowed that growth to happen. Just as when we sign on to a hospital and our boss watches us and says, well, maybe I think you can do this more hard surgery, and then they watch us. and I think allowing it. But when we have so many veterinary technicians that they're not being allowed to do and max out all the things that they were trained to do, then no, when we would ask them to go do it, no, we don't trust that because we've never allowed them to do it.
No, I
think
agree.
a lot of it's our fault. I think the biggest threat to veterinary technicians is the veterinarians.
Yeah.
Do we want to pay them all the extra money? Do we want to give them all that extra, power? I say yes, because that's, where I think this would make this job, flourish for so many more people.
Yeah. Well, I trusted my licensed technician so much. I brought her with me to the studio when I opened up this new studio. My staff where I used to work, and I've said this many times, would jump in front of a bus for me, and I trusted them with everything. But it was also the culture we had at our practice. Peter Weinstein, when I was an early career grad, Peter Weinstein told me to put a whole bunch of quarters in my pocket, and every time a technician caught me doing something that a technician could do and I could go do something else, I owed him a quarter. And when I ran out of $40, I was like, okay, I get your point, Peter. We're good. So, moving on to a different fun topic. Did you write questions for the NAVLE?
I did for 6 years, and right now I'm writing questions for the preventive medicine boards, but not quite as an official capacity.
Where do you find that early career veterinarians stumble the most?
With NAVLE?
With the NAVLE, yeah.
So I think the NAVLE is it's an amazing test. In fact, it's probably the only or most fair test you'll ever take in your life. It costs $1 million to make it fair. Every question costs at least $3,000 to make, which is funny because when I got on the board, and they said, "Oh, this is how many questions you're writing," I'll be like, "Well, I'll take more if it costs $3,000 a piece."
Exactly.
They're like, "No, you get paid nothing. This is
right.
pro bono." But all the cost is in the metrics to make sure it's a fair test. So the questions that we had done with preventive medicine, they were written by, one of us as specialists. They were reviewed by two, then they get sent over, and you have people that have degrees in education making sure that it looks fair. And even with all of that, they're still not sure if it's fair. And that comes into that 60 questions that don't count. And all the vets, I find it interesting, the vet students get so frustrated with those 60 questions but it's not fair. I'm like, no, it's actually fair that those don't count, because we need to run the metrics on the back end to make sure it was a fair question. I think in general,
1,000%.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, obviously we want fair because, when you go back to let's talk the ACT and the SAT, everyone said that test is unfair, but at least this is fair across the board. I mean, because you're testing all demographics, all ethnicities, all races, all educations from all the different schools, and you're figuring out what's going on.
And
I
it's
think that's
updated
important.
so constantly that it is very current. I think where the other thing is I don't know that necessarily so many are doing badly, because part of it is also who's supposed to pass this test. Pretty much everyone that has passed vet school. AVMA actually wants you to do it. Now, of course, if it was 100% all the time, we'd be scratching our heads thinking maybe this wasn't stringent enough. But if your school falls below a very high percentage, you are on the dock for losing accreditation through the AVMA. So I don't know that a lot of people stumble, because the vast majority of people taking it are passing within 1 to 2 times. I think a lot of people, when they don't pass the first time, I think it's probably just, was it a bad day? Was it overstressed? Were they overthinking it? I think the one big piece of advice that I give everyone looking at the NAVLE is every question is written by a specialist. So if you have a spay question, that was written by a surgeon. If it is a question on diabetes, that was written by an internist. But we are writing it for what we believe a first year brand new average veterinarian should know. So that means that you're looking for horses, not zebras. And that is the one big stumbling block of every answer is correct. It's just one is way more correct than everything else, which is why I'm actually glad I'm off the I'm off it.
Yeah.
That was so hard to make those questions. It
Yeah.
was so hard to write a question that had
Four correct answers, and you had to choose which one.
Yeah, and one was way more correct than the others, and you had
Okay,
to
how
have
is
the
that
right.
fair? Seriously, Chris, how is that fair if there's 4 correct answers?
Okay, so if you look at, common things of a cat abscess, could that be bubonic plague? Yes. Is it likely? No. So it's one of those where I think we're trained that you need to look for those zebras, and that's part of what it is, but that also is not what makes the average practice and gets you through the day. So like right now, I'm in fact today I need to work on our submission to the CDC, where I ended up diagnosing a couple dogs with salmon poisoning here in Southern California. Is that likely? No. Should that be a board question? No, because everything about those looked like some type of general toxicosis or pancreatitis, and everything that came back on it. But that was why, with the schooling that we went through, in your mind, you also need to be keeping up zebras. But should those a 1 in 5 year diagnosis be on an exam question? No, that's not what it's supposed to be.
Oh my gosh, you brought me back. I remember when we learned about salmon poisoning at Illinois, the professor was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. None of these questions are going to be on the test." The first 6 questions on the test, on a 25 question test for salmon poisoning, my buddy went outside after he turned it in, hit the locker, and screamed the F word in the hallway. Oh my God, you just brought me back. He passed away, but God rest his soul. James Morlock. This guy was 6'4", 6'4". He was a linebacker size. Oh my gosh, you brought me back. Yeah. Salmon poisoning, doxycycline. I think that's all I remember.
But coming back to it, like as partly why that is fair too. Think about what daily practice is most of the time, right? You're sitting there because it is very much NAVLE-like, right? You have a sick dog or cat in front of you, or whatever species that you're looking at. You have the history, the signalement, clinical signs, blood work. And from that, you're like, I have a list of like 4 things that this could be. And the client is no longer letting me pursue more diagnostics. So I need to go with what's going to capture the most light. That's not that unfair, and if I'm sitting there going, well, that could be bubonic plague, that could be salmon poisoning, that's not serving the majority of my patients.
Yeah. Well, I gotta, because I want to write an article on this, because I think I know where I want to go, but do you think we need to redefine the gold standard in veterinary medicine?
Even
because of the cost of care?
I guess asking you more like, what do you mean by gold? What gold standard? Are we talking about the paradigm, the veterinarian?
No, I'm just talking like, there's a gold standard. Like, let's just say, for what you were saying, they've run out of money and you can't run more diagnostics. I feel as if some state medical boards will go after veterinarians because they didn't run enough. And then, and if you can't run all those tests, right, because of money, maybe you could do x-rays or blood work. You got to choose.
Okay. So that's 2 different, I guess that's okay. Now I understand where you're coming from on that. I think that is more of a government greed problem than it is what we as the veterinary community are doing. So I remember there was a doctor here in Southern California that was on the board that looked at cases that came through and read, should this go forward or not? And it was funny because at the time it was with when Schwarzenegger was in office, and I will spare everybody any type of trying to do the accent. But what he went to Schwarzenegger and said, look, Arnold, if you just send these to me and a couple of the other vets, we can weed out like 9 out of 10 of these don't need to be pursued. And he goes, no, you don't understand. This isn't about trying to find who should or should not be going after. These groups, these government agencies, they want to go after more because they come to me once a year and they all say the same thing. Look at how many more cases we've had to investigate for the public good because we've had this much extra work. We need this much extra funding. That's what it's about, and that's not going to change. So that is a very different situation. I've talked to some people at AVMA PLIT, and they have said that for various reasons, since COVID, the amount of cases going to the board is exponentially high. So I would not be surprised if all of our liabilities go up by virtue of the fact that they are having to employ a lot more people. They have a lot more cases. It's a very different situation. So I think that unfortunately is a government situation and not necessarily what we can fix within a clinic.
Yeah, well, I mean, but if you do go in front of a board, you always will have some specialist that's going to sit there and try to combat what you did. You know, they always have their.
If it goes that
experts.
far, if it goes that far.
Yeah, exactly.
But most of them don't. Most of them do not, but they will go to a certain degree. And part of that due diligence, I mean, I think you could argue it both ways. Part of the due diligence may be for, protecting the public good, but I think part of it's also to say, maybe this is a way to get money. Again, I'm not directly involved in those. So when I do look at the board, I don't know. I'll kind of bite my tongue on that.
Yeah. There you go. We won't say anything bad about the board or the IRS on this show.
Yeah, no, it's not that. I don't know any of some of them personally on what it is. I feel like some of what goes to the board when I've talked to people of what they've had to go through. I remember one of my employees got taken to the board and I was having to answer questions as the manager. And I remember saying, what you're asking me about on this third round of questions has nothing to do with the complaint, has nothing to do with the why the patient was ultimately put to sleep. It is very irrelevant. And the response was, oh, yeah, no, it's not about that. It's about we are looking to see if there is anything that could have been done better. I'm like, well, you can always do everything better.
And that's why we're calling it practice. Sorry.
And it was funny because what was nitpicked was, the person did end up getting to a very mild reprimand on it, but none of it had anything to do with this. And unfortunately, I've talked to four people personally that are brilliant vets that have all made it out of private practice or hate it. I know one that's still in it that hates it, and it's because of this.
Mm-hmm.
Cover
your ass medicine. Cover your ass medicine is what it's turned out to be.
It is, and that's unfortunately that has become an issue. Like for me personally too, I just had a client a couple weeks ago saying, well, I want you to run the x-rays, but I don't want you to send them out to a radiologist. It's like, nope. And they're like, well, why? It's like, I said, one, I don't want to miss anything for your pet, but two, it's a liability situation.
It is. That's why you just work in that radiology consult into your x-ray fee.
And I'm not going to, I didn't say this obviously, but I'm not going to save you $250 so I can put myself at a much higher liability.
Yeah.
That's not going to. And also, I am not a radiologist. And on the human side, that isn't done that way. Unfortunately, at the same time, just like we were talking about earlier, like you doing the 12 surgeries of Christmas, which I think is wonderful. I would not do that unless it was a rescue situation, just because doing it for free does not reduce your liability in any conceivable way.
I know.
And that's one of the other challenges with this. And this is why this is the struggle. So I do think that, when we come back about how do we look at the gold standard, yeah, that is a challenge. Prices, do I think prices are too high? Yes. But at the same time, I'm not making a big deal to cut them too much because it's not reducing my liability, or the complaint.
I hear you. Yeah, liabilities always used to scare the heck out of me. And so, when it comes to liability as well, your strong forte, because I've listened to a couple of your lectures, are vaccines. What's the biggest myth you hear about animal vaccines, and how do early career vets bust that in the exam room?
So for example, when I get pushback, when I talk to vets, and as we talked about before, I love lepto, very passionate about it, love talking about it. And I just did 2 talks for Zoetis over on the East Coast, actually 4 talks, and it was all on lepto. And when I asked the crowd, do you get pushback? And the pushback is usually, well, my pet's not at risk, or the breeder said, right? And so for me, the pushback is for the breeder said not to do it. I said, so let me get this straight. Clients coming to you saying, look, doc, I trust you. You're the best vet. I would only trust your thing. But in this situation, I got to go with the breeder because this breeder knows this lineage. They've been breeding these dogs for a long time, and they can't have lepto because it's going to be so bad, right? Isn't that what you hear?
Oh, well, yeah. It's anesthesia in a bulldog, greyhound. I mean, all these myths about all the breeds specifics. Yep.
So when it comes to the vaccines, that's where how I talk to clients is, well, then there's 2 possibilities. Either your breeder is one of the most unethical people on the planet, or your breeder's mistake. And I say that because what has saved more lives than vaccines of dogs, cats, humans, anything else? There is nothing outside of clean water. We save more lives with vaccines than we do through prescription of antibiotics or any other single thing that we do. So you are telling me that you have a breeder that is knowingly taking a group of animals and promoting a lineage that is refractive and cannot have the most life-saving medical invention in our time.
And let's throw in there it's zoonotic as well.
And it's zoonotic. But even just from the pet's perspective, that is absolutely, how unethical would it be to say, hey, you know what? I have a group of animals. I'm going to breed little puppies that could just die from a disease. Oh, yeah. And by the way, it could be zoonotic and kill the humans. But I don't care because, gosh, they're cute. No, that is an unethical individual. But that is not what those breeders are doing, right? They are just misinformed. And they are thinking about the vaccine from before. And then you go through how things have improved and a couple studies. And I get everybody to get the vaccine.
So what do you think about that thimerosal free bullshit update or debate that's going on?
Oh, that's been going. So way back in the day, so thimerosal, again, for everyone watching this, kind of ties back into the mercury in vaccines because thimerosal is a preservative that has a mercury molecule in it. So typically when people are talking about thimerosal or mercury, it's kind of the same thing. And this goes back to Andrew Wakefield, who is a discredited doctor, lost his ability to practice in both the UK and the United States for falsifying data saying that these vaccines led to autism. So there's really not, data for that. To me, the easy answer is look at all the other places that we use mercury-based preservatives. Eye drops, various medications when we do allergy testing, some of those have it. And my favorite is mercury-based preservatives are very common in some tattooings. So there are people that come in with a nice little sleeve they've been exposed to more mercury than all of your patients have, or year. So to me, wait until we see more data. Thimerosal is one of the most heavily studied molecules out there, and never have we seen the issues with links to autism.
So what if I
But
gave you?
also most vaccines don't have it anymore.
I know. Well, how about this? This was my personal favorite. I know a veterinarian that actually advertised that he did holistic rabies vaccine because he used thimerosal free.
Yeah, I mean, with
Is it
holistic,
come on.
the term just doesn't have there's not a legal definition in the government,
Right.
so you can kind of say holistics whatever you want. It is frustrating though, but at least that's better. I know people that I've known a hospital that does not give rabies vaccines because they don't believe in it.
Wow. Well, that's illegal, isn't it?
It's not illegal. It's just insane.
Well, I mean, if you have to register your dog, in order to get it, you got to license your dog legally. In order to license your dog, you must have a rabies vaccine.
Right. So that may be illegal for the pet owners not getting their pets vaccinated, but it's not illegal for the vet not to offer
Do it. Yeah. Wow.
It's just, but when you ask them, 3 vets are like, well, yeah, it's pretty much eradicated. I'm like, no, not even in California. We get an average about 200 positive cases a year. Granted, the majority is wild animals, but that's because we vaccinate. That's why it's not higher. And there was that woman that died last year from rabies.
Yeah. True, false questions. Leptospirosis is in all 50 states.
True.
Yeah. Is it still rampant in Arizona?
It's really hard. There's no really good prevalence data.
There isn't.
But except what we do have is there was a really great study that looked at all the different published studies on rat prevalence. And if you take a look globally, looking at the many different studies that went into that, about 1 out of 3 rats has it. And so as long as you have rats, you have lepto. And when you take a look at where all the large outbreaks were, they are not what you think of as your high humidity, situation. A lot of them are drier urban situations: California, Utah, Arizona.
Unbelievable. Heartworm exists in all 50 states.
True. Yeah, it's true.
Even Alaska, right?
Even Alaska. Yeah, that's why. I'm sorry. It's taking a second to think there.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to remember if the American Heartworm Society says all connecting, or everybody. But I mean, it's here, and certainly in Southern California, we are seeing a rise of it because of the invasive species of Aedes aegypti and albopictus. Those are bringing in, and at the ER, we have been getting autochthonous cases out of Calamasa, which is what you would think of as would be not really a good place for them to thrive, but it is here. Interestingly, if we're talking about myths, one of the big things that I find interesting is the way that we do heartworm testing in our hospitals. On the human side, that would be a case of illegality. We would not be legally allowed to do the SNAP tests on the human side in there because of antigen binding. Because when you do heat fixation, there's such a dramatic increase in your positive rate. The whole purpose of screening is to capture all the possibles, and then you can always figure out the false positives later. That's a lot easier than if you get a false negative. And that's part of public health, is you never want to have a situation where you're having a large known false negative rate. And unfortunately, with where we are, depending on certainly by state too, when you don't do heat fixing, you do have a much lower capture.
Do you recommend doing year-round heartworm now with global warming? Because I know Chagas disease is making its way up here. So, and they were saying it's because of global warming and tsetse fly being able to move north. Do you think that year-round heartworm is important everywhere?
I do for so many reasons, but I will say that when I sell it, and I'm good at selling it too. I love these new combinations that we have, but I don't sell them on heartworm. I do not sell them on heartworm. I do it because of it, but with the clients, I'm talking about intestinal parasite risks, fleas, ticks, mites. Hey, my gosh, all these, and it's nice now that I'm not working salaried by a company. I don't have to worry about talking about extra label and being able to talk to the clients about, hey, you put your dog on, NexGard, Quattro, Trio, you put them on one of these like nice little combination products, and it not only is it fleas and ticks, and I'll blow past the heartworms, but it's roundworms, intestinal parasites, mites, all these extra things. I can list all kinds of nematodes if you want that they also get. But your dog and cat even become a little mosquito zapper. Any mosquito that bites them will die. So if you're out there on the patio with all of your dogs around on something like Trio or Quattro or NexGard combo, you're just killing all these little mosquitoes out there. So it's a wonderful thing for everybody.
It's
So
more
I feel
fun
like
when they go into the light, though, because then you get that zapping sound.
that's the one thing. Now I've talked to like Zoetis and Elanco. I'm like, guys, these dogs need to kind of do a little blue flash.
That would be awesome. Oh, that would be awesome. How do you address clients who won't ever start flea meds or heartworm meds due to the possibility of seizures?
Seizures. Well, then it's a lot of times asking, what are you doing instead? Right.
Coconut
And they're
oil.
saying,
That's my personal favorite.
right. Actually, we did one. Well, we did a call on Vet Watch with a toxicologist, and it was funny because we're looking at a website where it was, how many cloves of garlic do you feed your dog weekly to help stop it? And it's like, that's crazy. So it's funny because when you talk them through some of those, right, you can easily move through how that's not going to work. And then when they say, oh, I just go down to, Costco and I just grab one of these topicals or flea collar, I think discussing that those are pesticides. And let me talk to you about the benefits of a, safe drug and why we recommend it. And now these combinations, right? We can say all the wonderful things that it does. And I think that places the value higher up in the client's mind. But again, just as a quick, easy thing for people to talk in the rooms, if it is available over the counter in the US for fleas and ticks, those are going to be EPA governed, which means by definition, they are pesticides, and anything that you're prescribing that needs a prescription is going to be an FDA drug. Now, maybe that's a little bit disingenuous because just because you're labeled as a drug doesn't make you inherently safer than being labeled as a pesticide, but it is an easy way in an exam room when you have very limited time to make a discussion.
And so I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about screwworms, because that's been your passion. You're loving this. So why don't you give us an update on screwworm? Introduction for those of us who don't know much, and what you foresee and what are the issues with screwworm.
Yeah. So New World screwworm, Cochlimia hominivorax, is a fly who has what's called primary, it's an obligate myiasis. And so when we think about the average maggot, right, if you have a case that comes in with a maggot, you think of a debilitated animal, has a wound, these maggots are in there, and they're eating all that dead tissue. When we see that, and I always find it funny, right, because whenever you have a maggot case in the clinic, you know it, because you have people running both ways.
Right.
You have people running towards it because they want to see it, and the people running away from it because they don't. But those maggots are actually helping the animal. What you're trying to deal with is underlying, why did this animal get debilitated to this point? because most of the maggots that we have here in the US, they're eating that necrotic dead tissue. New World screwworm is very different. It likes its meat grade A. It only will eat off of live, healthy tissue. And it is absolutely devastating. Back in the 1950s, it was costing the US about $120 million a year. I have to look back at my notes. But in producer loss. Right now, my understanding is if you are a beef producer in South America, so it is endemic in South America, you expect 10 to 30% of your herd lost due to New World screwworm. All you need is a little scratch or even your mucous membranes. The fly will lay eggs within 24 hours. These hatch and they start eating through your body. So that's the devastation of it. We had, in certain states, we were at risk of having white-tailed deer go extinct within the states, not as a species. And a large part of it, not all of it, but a large part was New World screwworm. It took huge efforts to get rid of it. How we got rid of it was by releasing, so in the late 1960s, it was eradicated through using irradiated males. So one of the things about female screwworms is they only mate once, and after that, then they go lay their eggs. If you irradiate a male and then they mate, then those eggs are no longer viable. So we were releasing through 3 sites 800 million flies per week.
Wow.
After that was eradicated and pushed down only into South America, then Copeg out of Panama stayed there and has just created this nice little buffer. And they've been releasing 100 million sterile screwworm flies weekly since the 70s. And that's been fine. So the other 2 sites, Tuxtla, Mexico, and Mission, Texas, were shut down. They were actually converted over for fruit flies to deal with fruit fly issues to help with agriculture. And everything was tickety-boo for decades. Well, what we saw was there's a large movement in South America of people moving northward. With that came animals, with that came disruption and New World screwworm came with. Within the last year or so, it is invaded into every country in Central America. It's gotten into Mexico. They have thousands of case reports for animals. And as of this week, 45 human cases in Mexico. We are, as a government, we're trying to expand those other 2 facilities. I believe Tuxtla is actually reconverting back into screwworm irradiation. Mission, Texas, they can't get rid of their fruit fly, so they're expanding out. And so hopefully we will, but it may take a couple years to do so. We have active traps that we have given to Mexico. And so both on the Mexico side and on our side, we have hundreds of traps along the border, and we are checking them regularly for screwworm. As of now, we do not.
Wow. Is there a treatment?
Yeah, actually, it's wonderful too for pets, at least. Any of your isoxazoline, so Trio, Quattro, Nexgard combo, all of those will do fine. Nitin Pyram or Capstar will work. It's not hard to kill the maggots. The problem is to get it into all of the wildlife, into the people. And for livestock, there's going to be withdrawal times. And so right now we don't have active approval. So that was one of the things I think most people saw in the news, is that they're working to try to fast track. That doesn't mean that you can just use whatever you want or what works in livestock, but it does mean that we've opened the doors to make it easier to get things approved. I do think the other thing that is important is that this is a very different situation than Florida 2016. So we did have a New World screwworm incursion in Florida, but that was linked to what was suspected to be a smuggled dog from Cuba, where it is endemic. And that led to millions and millions of dollars and a lot of government effort to stop that.
Wow.
What we are seeing is a wave, a tsunami of screwworms coming up through all of Mexico that will flood into the United States. So it's going to be a very different situation than 2016 without an as easy of a solution.
What's your prediction on when it hits the United States?
I would think that it could be this year to early next year. It may be here as we speak. I don't know. They're checking traps.
Yeah, they're checking traps. Yeah. Wow. That's some scary, scary things to hear about. So yeah. I that's why I look forward to reading about it and following you. Like I said before, you're one of the greatest lecturers I've ever went to. We didn't even get into ticks and how ticks just sit there blindly waving away, just waiting for stuff. Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what you did. You were, so I think, you know, I know you're busy and I'm going to let you go, but I definitely want to have you back on. There's a lot of things I'd love to talk to you still about. I want to thank you for everything you're doing for the profession, because you were one of the ones who left the profession, but you're stayed in because you're still a cheerleader and helping the profession move along. You seem to have you have the same concerns I do about the profession, for sure. But I just want to make sure all the listeners out there know that people like Dr. Lee and myself, we exist because we're here to help you in any way we can. We're cheerleaders. I am not going to make fair NAVLE questions, because if I ever made a NAVLE question, there would be one obvious answer and 3 wrong. But that's just me. I find that one fair. So, Dr. Lee, thank you so much for being here today. It means a lot out of your busy schedule. And I look forward to talking to you again, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. We'll talk to everybody later. Thank you for listening on Irreplaceable Truths.